know this word, right, Krishna Kripa?
Yeah, what's it? Say again?
BC.
No.
AV, Ananta, what's his name? He's in Alachua.
Not Vrindavan?
Not in Vrindavan.
Really?
Yeah.
He was around then?
Yeah.
Wow. I met him working with
Amazing, huh? Huh? Okay. AV. Ananta Mayalona, that's another Ananta. Do you ever go to the Festival of the Holy Name? Ananta? He would chant there. He's friends with a black body devotee. You know, one of the old Guru Kulis there with my son-in-law and my kids. So before reading the Spotless Purana, we'll read about one of the person Bhagavatas, His Divine Grace, ACBSP Swami Prabhupada. This is volume 6 of Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, titled India Unifying ISKCON. Okay. As the festival drew near, we're just talking about the Mayapur festival, some of the sannyasis arrived, hoping to associate more intimately with Srila Prabhupada before the flood of devotees began. A major topic of discussion among the sannyasis was a controversy over the role of grihastha men in ISKCON and the influence of women and children on the sannyasis and brahmacharis, those in the renounced orders. Some things never change. Some of the sannyasis were suggesting that ISKCON should be more structured to separate the renounced orders and the preachers from the householders. They began airing their views before Srila Prabhupada, who then guided them. On one morning walk, Jayapatak Swami inquired about the standards required before a man could take sannyas. To become sannyasi, Prabhupada replied, the other three processes are there: to become brahmachari, to become grihastha, and to become vanaprastha, stage by stage. But if one is able, he can take sannyas. And that competency is also very simple. If you become fully Krishna conscious, then you can immediately become competent. Brahma bhuyaya kalpate. As soon as you fully engage yourself in Krishna consciousness, then immediately you become more than a sannyasi. Harishori, a grihastha, inquired whether artificially accepting the renounced order could actually be indulging in another form of sense gratification. As soon as we manufacture something, Prabhupada replied, that is sense gratification. When we think, I want to fulfill my desire, that's all, that is sense gratification. It may be that I sit down under a tree or I sit down in a place. The basic principle is sense gratification. The other day I was talking about hirachor and kirachor. Hira means diamond and kira means cucumber. One is thinking, I shall steal one cucumber. And another thinks, if I steal, I shall steal the diamond. But the stealing propensity is there. One may think that I am only stealing a cucumber, and it is not very dangerous. But in the eyes of the law, both of them are criminal. So if we manufacture a concoction, yes, I have got a stealing propensity, but I'll not steal a diamond. I'll steal kira. That is only mental concoction, but he is thief. Jayapatak Swami. So is grihastha life in Krishna consciousness allowing us to steal kira? Prabhupada, yes, kirachor. The prostitute hunter is hirachor, and the householder is kirachor, that's all. Again, Harishari inquired whether artificial enunciation was sense gratification. There were different views among the disciples, and they wanted Prabhupada to make it very clear so that one party could not take a quote from Prabhupada and claim it was universal. Renunciation is not artificial, said Prabhupada. It is a process. We have to give up this sense gratification. So go through a process to turn. Like sometimes in a health club, there is artificial swimming, is it not? Artificial swimming is not actual swimming, but it is to practice. How does Prabhupada know these things? Dayananda. But sometimes people who renounce, they become very proud. What is that? Dayananda was a householder. Prabhupada continued to reply that renunciation had to be actually practiced. Everyone must attend the Mangal Arati. He said, one must attend this, otherwise no prasadam. Okay, that's where the famous saying comes from, which we followed strictly in the early days. If you are too sick, then also you should not eat. There should not be sleeping at the time of Mangal Arati, because he says he's sick, then at the time of prasadam, voracious eating. If the devotees were looking for Prabhupada to make an absolute distinction between grihastha and sannyasi, it was not there. He emphasized, rather, the actual quality and the practice of the individual devotee. On another morning walk, Hridayananda Goswami told Prabhupada of the sannyasis discussion. Hridayananda: we were thinking that it would be nice to have the city centers for the preachers, and for the women and children, it's much easier to maintain them on our farms. There they can do a little work and produce their own food. Prabhupada: yes, in the farms they can live and do some hard work. Not hard work, hand work. Guru Kripa Swami: they won't do it though, Srila Prabhupada. Ever the skeptic, Guru Kripa. Prabhupada: then you don't allow. If they do not follow the rules and regulations, then what is the use? Another sannyasi said that when many householders came together in big communities, an atmosphere of laziness developed, whereas when lots of brahmacharis were preaching together, it was more enlivening. Srila Prabhupada: anyway, everyone should be engaged, that's all. No idle life. Never encourage laziness. If we maintain some lazy men, then everything will be spoiled. Devotee: I heard, Srila Prabhupada, that you remarked our society is not a love-making society, but these things are going on. Referring to an impropriety of two of his disciples, Prabhupada replied, yes, I have seen in Vrindavan. Other complaints arose. One leader argued that the temple should not have to carry the burden of maintaining women with children, but no husbands. Another complaint was that brahmacharis, by selling books, were in effect supporting the householders. Prabhupada continued to reply in a philosophical and practical way that whatever discrepancies were present should be rectified. Sense gratification, laziness, and failure to attend the temple programs should not be tolerated. But this condemnation of malpractices in devotional service did not fall exclusively on any particular group. Shortly after his arrival in Mayapur, Prabhupada had addressed a similar issue in his own correspondence. And Mr. Chatterjee had written from Calcutta to say that he was preaching worship of Lord Chaitanya and was eager to show Srila Prabhupada some articles he had written. Mr. Chatterjee stated, my theme is we can get to see our God, Gauranga, by taking sannyas. Those who are grihastas reach to the Godhead through Nam Sankirtan. Srila Prabhupada encouraged the man with a reply. Your theme is okay. There are many devotees of Lord Chaitanya like Advaitacharya and even Lord Nityananda who are grihastas. Lord Chaitanya left his grihasta life. It is a matter of understanding Krishna. That is the real qualification. Whether one is grihasta or sannyasi, how well he knows Krishna. Srila Narottam Das Thakur's son, Grihe Bane Take, He Gauranga Bole Dake. Lord Chaitanya says, Kiba Vipra Kiba Nyasi Sudra Kene Nai, Ye Krishna Tadvavit Se Guru Hoy. So please come and we shall discuss your articles. Srila Prabhupada Ki. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari. Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajakachaja Sutta Sutta Shri Śhrīmad Divine Grace Abhaya Chandravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Granta Raj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Ki Go Premanandi. All glories to some of the devotees. All glories to some of the devotees. All glories to some of the devotees. All glories to Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga and Srila Prabhupada. Namo Om Vishnudaya Krishna Prasthapatale. Śrīmate Bhaktivedanta Swamiti Nami Namaste Saraswati Gauri Pachai Nivisheshana Vidipasachadishtani. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, 2nd Canto, 6th Chapter, Text 20, chapter entitled Purusha Sukta Confirmed. Padas Trayo Bahis Jasan Aprajanam Ya Ashamaha Antas Trilokyas Twapado Griyamedo Brihadbrataha Padastrayobihi Shasan Aprajanam Yashamaha Antas Trilokyas Twapado Antas Trilokyas Twapado Griyamedo Brihadbrataha Griyamedo Brihadbrataha. Please chant. Padastriyo Bhishchasan Aprajanam Yashamaha Antas Trilokyas Twapado Griyamedo Brihadbrataha Antas Trilokyas Aprajanam Yashamaha Antachilokya Chaparo Griyamedo Brihad Brataha. We'll wait for Nathabhara to take his seat there. Padas Trayobihi Chasan Aprajanam Yashamaha Antachilokya Chaparo Griyamedo Brihad Bataha Padastrayobihi Chasan Aprajanam Yashamaha Antachilokya Chaparo Griyamedo Brihad Bataha. Ladies, lady. Antachilokya Chasan Aprajanam Yashamaha Antachilokya Chaparo Griyamedo Brihad Brataha Padatraya. The cosmos of 3/4 of the Lord's energy. Bahi, thus situated beyond. Cha, and for all. Asan, were. Aprajanam, of those who are not meant for rebirth. Yea, those. Ashramaha, status of life. Antak, within. Trilokya, of the 3 worlds. To, but. Apara, others. Griyameda, attached to family life. Brataha, without strictly following a vow of celibacy. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The spiritual world, which consists of 3/4 of the Lord's energy, is situated beyond this material world and is especially meant for those who will never be reborn. Others who are attached to family life and who do not strictly follow celibacy vows must live within the 3 material worlds. Please repeat. The spiritual world, which consists of 3/4 of the Lord's energy, is situated beyond this material world, and it is especially meant for those who will never be reborn. Others who are attached to family life and who do not strictly follow celibacy vows must live within the 3 material worlds. Purport. The climax of the system of Varnashram Dharma or Sanatan Dharma is clearly expressed here in this particular verse of Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam. The highest benefit that can be awarded to a human being is to train him to be detached from sex life, particularly because it is only due to sex indulgence that the conditioned life of material existence continues birth after birth. Human civilization in which there is no control of sex life is a 4th-class civilization, because in such an atmosphere there is no liberation of the soul encaged in the material body. Birth, death, old age, and disease are related to the material body, and they have nothing to do with the spirit soul. But as long as the bodily attachment for sensual enjoyment is encouraged, the individual spirit soul is forced to continue the repetition of birth and death on account of the material body, which is compared to garments subjected to the law of deterioration. In order to award the highest benefit of human life, the Varnashram system trains the follower to adopt the vow of celibacy, beginning from the order of Brahmachari. The Brahmachari life is for students who are educated to follow strictly the vow of celibacy. Youngsters who have had no taste of sex life can easily follow the vow of celibacy, and once fixed in the principle of such life, one can very easily continue to the highest perfectional stage attaining the kingdom of the three-fourths energy of the Lord. It is explained that in the cosmos of three-fourths energy of the Lord, there is neither death nor fear, and one is full of the blissful life of happiness and knowledge. A householder attached to family life can easily give up such a life of sex indulgence if he has been trained in the principles of the life of a brahmachari. A householder is recommended to quit home at the end of 50 years, panchasordvang, vanang vrajet, and live a life in the forest. Then, being fully detached from family affection, he may accept the order of renunciation as a sannyasi, fully engaged in the service of the Lord. Any form of religious principles in which the followers are trained to pursue the vow of celibacy is good for the human being, because only those who are trained in that way can end the miserable life of material existence. The principles of nirvana, as recommended by Lord Buddha, are also meant for ending the miserable life of material existence. And this process, in the highest degree, is recommended here in the Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam with clear perception of ideal perfection. Although basically there is no difference between the process of Buddhists, Shankarites, Vaishnavites, etc. For promotion to the highest status of perfection, namely freedom from birth and death, anxiety and fearfulness, not one of these processes allow the follower to break the vow of celibacy. The householders and persons who have deliberately broken the vow of celibacy cannot enter into the kingdom of deathlessness. The pious householders or the fallen yogis or the fallen transcendentalists can be promoted to the higher planets within the material world, 1/4 of the energy of the Lord. But they will fail to enter into the kingdom of God, deathlessness. Abrihad Bratas are those who have broken the vow of celibacy. The Vanaprasthas are those retired from family life, and the sannyasis or the renounced persons cannot break the vow of celibacy if they want success in the process. The brahmacharis, vanaprasthas, and sannyasis do not intend to take rebirth, a praja, nor are they meant for secretly indulging in sex life. Such a fall down by the spiritualist may be compensated by another chance for human life in good families of learned brahmanas or of rich merchants for another term of elevation. But the best thing is to attain the highest perfection of deathlessness as soon as the human form of life is attained. Otherwise, the whole policy of human life will prove to be a total failure. Lord Chaitanya was very strict in advising his followers in this matter of celibacy. One of his personal attendants, Chota Haridas, was severely punished by Lord Chaitanya because of his failure to observe the vow of celibacy. For a transcendentalist, therefore, who at all wants to be promoted to the kingdom beyond material miseries, it is worse than suicide to deliberately indulge in sex life, especially in the renounced order of life. Sex life in the renounced order of life is the most perverted form of religious life, and such a misguided person can only be saved if, by chance, he meets a pure devotee. Om Jnana Tamrandasya Garanjana Shalakaya Chaksho Amlatemena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Vankaite Gurum Yat Kripatam Ham Vande Shri Gurum Tenatanam. Translation again. The spiritual world, which consists of 3/4 of the Lord's energy, is situated beyond this material world, and it is especially meant for those who will never be reborn. Others who are attached to family life and who do not strictly follow celibacy vows must live within the 3 material worlds. Very interesting that that section in Lilamrita that we just read also seemed to imply the purport of this verse, and was a good example that for all practical purposes, Grihastha life should be preceded logically by brahmachari life. You know, in Kali Yuga there is no so-called brahmachari ashram. Unfortunately, people are exposed at an early age to consider that sex life is the highest pleasure in the material world and it should be attained at all costs. And so therefore, even in the early ages, People, all they can think of, and all they're exposed to, is various forms of sex, gross and subtle. So that at the time, if they decide to become grihastas, they have no ability to control their senses. And unfortunately, this leads to another complication in the material world, which is varna shankara. Even without grihastha life, because many people just don't have any concept of the sanctity of marriage, and so they engage in it or indulge in some shadow reflection by cohabitation, but they have not taken any vows. There is no honor or loyalty or commitment, and it is all just like animal life. It's like animals meet and have sex and separate, and the female of the species goes and gives birth, in most circumstances without the benefit of the male partner. In some species there's connection that remains, and you see that those connections are always praised that by humans for that what seems to be a very infrequent situation, that some animals will mate for life, and people are in awe of this, since humans don't mate for life, basically. So this connection to stay together with one's mate is held in high esteem, even if they don't do it themselves. They somehow understand that this is a praiseworthy achievement. And yes, but even then it is not meant. Household life is also meant for a certain period of time, typically 25 years. And why 25 years? Because that is usually the age of the eldest son, who is at that point married and able to take care of the mother, since it is the duty of the son to take care of the mother at that point in time. But we see that there is just this process is unknown. And so therefore, everything is going on, not just in household life, but in general, in a very haphazard fashion. People do not know what is to be done and what is not to be done. That is the conclusion. So therefore, we have these guidebooks. Even in the material world, they have such guidebooks. But people don't take advantage of them. They have one such guidebook. What is that? Men are from Mars and women are from Venus. This is a guidebook that people are expected to be familiar with if they're entering into the Grihastha ashram. So we don't belittle the efforts of the materialists to try to understand what makes a relationship work. But ultimately, if God is not in the center, it doesn't matter what other word jugglery is involved, there's no commitment. There's ultimately no commitment. Because people, they have false conceptions of what married life should be. What to speak of married life. They have false conceptions of what brahmacharya life should be. We understand that, and we've seen by practical experience, after being around so many different circumstances, that those who have remained brahmachari for some time, they can be strong grihastas, because they're accustomed to controlling their senses. It is not by repression, right? Isn't that what the conclusion is in Bhagavad Gita? What does a repression accomplish? It's hard to say whether it's a good thing or a bad thing to know that someone's at the door. No, I think it's a good thing. I mean, that's what a temple is for. And without a temple, where would one practice this brahmachari? Where does he become filled? Now many people are encouraged, you just remain in your position. But they're coming as what? As students or as casual visitors. And then they're going back outside, and they're engaged in so many activities, and they're expected to try to understand this highest knowledge. But without any attempt to control the senses, it is very difficult. And so they struggle mightily. So we see how much benefit, just from this purport, that a temple, what facility it offers. It is not obsolete, as some would say. You know, Prabhupada also mentioned, but there's a purport. He said, we have enough temples. A few things he said about that. We have enough temples, we have enough men, now boil the milk. Right? And then in New York, on his last visit, he said, we have enough temples, now open reading rooms and restaurants. Reading rooms and restaurants. But the idea is, of course, we need to maintain all those temples that Prabhupada created. You know, exactly for how they were structured at that time, and each temple was complete as a unit. He also said that the grahastas should manage the temple, and the sannyasis and the brahmacharis should preach. So everything is there. Prabhupada gave us every instruction necessary for in order to perpetuate this movement without any interruption. It is only by our, how can you say, familiarity sometimes, at not appreciating the gravity of the order of the spiritual master, how everything, all success is dependent solely on this particular point, that we neglect certain things. And we think, oh, why do we need these big, big buildings? There's such difficulty to maintain. Yes, it's a fact. But we have lessons that when such facility is given to us by Krishna and it is not maintained, great distress and chaos ensues in the subsequent failure to properly take care of these institutions, these buildings. So the lesson is there. It says, those who forget history are doomed to repeat it. So, in general, that is true, and specifically for us, it is true. This, Prabhupada mentions here, perspective, perception. And this process in the highest degree is recommended here in the Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam with clear perception of ideal perfection. Clear perception of ideal perfection. And that in Bhagavad Gita, in the 10th chapter, Prabhupada defines intelligence as understanding things in their proper perspective. Understanding things in their proper perspective. That's intelligence. Knowledge is a difference between spirit and matter. But intelligence is understanding things in their proper perspective. And that's very important in order to self-assess one's situation. He has to have perspective. He has to be able to see things as they are in relation to one another. Whether it's his relationship to his ashram, to others' ashrams, or their relationship to him. So many things are dependent on perception. If one is thinking something which is not, that is the definition of Maya. The very definition of Maya, that which is not. So he has to be rightly situated. He has to perform his duties according to his varna and ashram, externally. And internally, he has to maintain his firm commitment that this is my last birth. Regardless of my external situation. Griyatake, vanitake, sada haribo. Whatever my this is just the situation I'm in according to my propensity, you can say. One becomes a grihastha, yes, because he has a propensity to have some association with the opposite sex. This is not a problem, natural. I was advised by one of my godbrothers, who is a very expert astrologer. He was going over to join the BI at that time in Bombay. This is in the late 70s, 78, 79. Now I was in charge of the Govinda's restaurant in Manhattan, very successful, first successful Govinda's restaurant. As a brahmachari, I didn't want to do it initially, but I was pressed by the temple authorities because the previous two devotees had given up in frustration. And this Prabhupada had so much emphasized this particular facility that it was, they thought, look, we'll give it to Hansarupa, you know, maybe he won't, you know, he will or he won't, but there was a lot of pressure. And so I was doing it for some time, and I was, and yes, it's difficult because you're dealing with all varieties of people all day long, and there's a natural interaction which has a tendency to be mundane. You know, how are you? How's the weather? How's the family? You know, it's not, and of course, occasionally you get to preach, that's the solace of such a program, is that you do get to observe those who are becoming purified by taking Krishna Prasadam. And this was Radha Govinda's Rajbhog offering, was the restaurant Prasadam. It wasn't just like, you know, throw it together and chant some mantras and put it out. No. We were in charge of Radha Govinda's Rajbhog offering. And that was the prasadam that was served in the restaurant. So this was as potent as possible, eventually. This was potent. And you saw people change before your eyes over the course. I did it for about 2.5 years. So you watch people transform. Many devotees became devotees from Govinda's restaurant. And you would watch them come, sometimes by themselves, sometimes in a group. So, but this devotee who was an astrologer, he was a brahmachari. But he had a weakness for restaurant prasadam. Of course, it was Radha Govinda's Mahaprasadam, but he had a weakness. So he said, Prabhu, just give me a little something, and I'll do your chart. So there was some bartering, you know. That's the Vedic system. So he did my chart. He was, you know, he's making all these calculations, and he was doing all this. Because he was getting ready to leave. I had been feeding him for probably a month now. He was getting ready to go. I said, hey, it's time to pay up. And we didn't pay much attention to astrology in those days. You know, it was just, you know, a casual thing. But whatever he said, it actually came true. It was very interesting. And one thing he said, you have very good opportunity to either become sannyas or grihas. In other words, it's not one or the other. You're 50-50. He said, but either one will be a rocky road. So you have to have your eyes open. You have to know. And nothing happened immediately. I was still just going along, happy-go-lucky brahmachari. It wasn't until 4 years later that I thought seriously that I should, become a grihasta due to my service. My service was restaurant, construction. There wasn't a lot of, opportunity, and in my experience, to maintain close association with your brahmachari god brothers. Very important to maintain this sangha. Because if you're all together, then it's like the bundle of sticks, the proverbial bundle of sticks. You're much stronger. But I had been separated because we had moved into a construction site to build a temple for Radha Govinda. There was no facility for other devotees. All the brahmacharis basically left. And so I was still a brahmachari, but I was doing the service. So, just small little lesson there. Maintain your relationships and remain strong and as long as possible. This is not an artificial process. To maintain that determination requires one to be continuously working on his higher consciousness, not his medium consciousness or his low consciousness, like the heater, You've got, low, medium, and high settings. You got to maintain the high setting. You can't think, well, let me go to the medium setting, and I'll just kind of I'll be in the middle. No, there is no middle. There is no middle. You have to maintain utsaha nishchaya dharya tat tat karma vart. And once that firm conviction or enthusiasm, then considerations begin to creep in. Well, maybe if I just do this or just do that, I'll just become a grihasta, I'll just do that. That's okay. But everything has to still remain. Prabhupada told us you cannot become a grihasta unless you can increase your service. Unless you can increase your service. Otherwise, what's the point? You're getting more facility. Brahmachari has to sleep very simply. He doesn't eat, it's only with the temple. He doesn't make any separate arrangements. Grihasta gets to, share everything. He gets a helpmate. They're partners together. There's additional facility. One cannot exploit this facility simply for sense gratification. Otherwise, he is doomed. He has missed that chance. He is misunderstood. So therefore, he has to increase his service. Increase. Very interesting how Prabhupada pronounced that. So brahmachari life is very simple. There's no disturbance, technically. The little, itching that's there. If you've taken seriously to the process of Krishna consciousness, you can avoid this. Like I said, up until the time that you can remain together in close association, you will not have any problems. You will not have any problems. So therefore, that's why we have this facility, the brahmachari. Everyone lives together. Not everybody in separate rooms. That's grihasta life. That's grihasta life. But together, sharing the austerities, this camaraderie makes it very easy. Very easy. You don't read any place where these brahmacharis are just wandering around independently. No, they're traveling in buses, in vans, in whatever, in the Harinam parties. And later as sannyas, when one is completely fixed, then he can go door to door, in his various madhukari, this, that, whatever. But he's at that point fixed. It's understood he's an old man. But even in old age, there's temptation. If one's mind is not fixed, then there's always danger of fall down. It doesn't matter what ashram he's in. You see that even in the grihasta, there's no protection. And there's unfortunate circumstances that take place. So one has to be cautious. As a private detective for many years, the bread and butter of the profession is what they call cheaters. You're hired by one or the other spouse to confirm that whether my significant other is cheating on me. This is the bread and butter of the profession. You sit there on surveillance. You have to follow someone here or there. And you have to videotape them. And you bring it back. And most spouses can tell. It's not that. But they want confirmation. They know that there's something gets in between the relationship. Anybody who's perceptive can tell. So they know. But they want confirmation. So what is it, this desire for sense gratification that transcends moral and ethical restraints? There's lust. Lust. The all-devouring sinful enemy of the world. And brahmacharya life is meant to control this lust. Simplicity in mind and habits, taking cold bath every morning without fail. Get in the habit. Do it now. Because you never know when that's all you'll have. And what's the point? And then you say, oh, I can't take bath today. Why? Because only cold water? Why? How is that? Very small things that break one's determination. And you think, oh, I can't stay in the ashram. It's too difficult. Yes, the ashram life is there. It's meant to be difficult. Where are the austerities in the material world? That is the wealth of the Brahman. Where do you get it? Where do you find it? You only find it in the temples of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. There is no other place to perform austerities now. Going out on Harinam daily in the cold subways, that is austerity. And it is the wealth of the Brahmanas. And it builds spiritual strength, tejas, which is like a bank account that one can draw upon in time of need. And if he has a depleted bank account, then fall down. So don't overdraw your account. Don't uselessly waste your accumulated spiritual strength on some mundane purpose. Because yes, why was Hiranyakashipu performing austerities? No one could perform austerities like that. He got the benediction of Lord Brahma. But he used it for a material purpose. He could have just as easily asked Lord Brahma, as his son did, as Dhruva Maharaj did, as all great sages did. Yes, I simply want to become the servant of your servant, the servant of Narad Muni. That's all. But he didn't. He thought, no, let me become controller of the universe. Let me become greater than the Creator, greater than Lord Brahma, greater than all the demigods. Yeah. One with God, immortal. So this, it's a progressive concept. So Prabhupada said, there's that famous lecture in Mayapur, the master disease. The master disease. Whether one is the ant or Lord Brahma, everyone is thinking, I am master. Master of my household, of the community, of the society, of the nation. It just goes on. Because that is our nature, to be controller. And so that nature is amplified in Grihastha life. So one has to control that. He has to still dovetail that tendency to serve Krishna. He wants to control, so he gets to control the household. to raise the children in Krishna consciousness, to serve the temple in whatever capacity. All right? Prabhupada said, temple president, temple should be managed by grihastas. Why? Because the grihastas have that tendency to take charge of some situation and to manage it properly. You know, and this, but of course, it has to be done on behalf of the spiritual master. These are not our buildings; they belong to the society. But one should act in such a way as if it was his. In that sense, responsibly, he should. But we're just caretakers. But the caretaker knows that I don't own the building, but yet I have been given charge of it. So therefore, I should make sure that everything is properly maintained. That is the caretaker. That is the proper, consciousness. Not that it is not my building and I neglect it. I don't care for it. Something breaks, that's okay. We don't care. It's not mine. I don't have to worry about it. Right? So that defeats the purpose. And sometimes that's where you see false renunciation. Right? Isn't that false renunciation? No, I shouldn't care. I just have to chant my rounds. Forget the broken pipes that are flooding the basement. Anyway, so such things are there. They're just expansions and extensions, positive or negative. You can compound mistakes, or you can compound your proper behavior to the point where one is completely free or one is completely entangled. Either way is there. They're just two paths. And of course, hearing Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, one is immediately rectified, whether he desires by just seeking knowledge. Just like when these patrons coming to the restaurant, they're simply seeking to fill their belly, but they're getting purification. So simply by this regular hearing of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, one's heart is becoming purified. And when the heart is purified, one's original consciousness is revealed. And when that original consciousness is revealed, then what the purport from yesterday, that samvit, sandini, and ladini, these things take place. They're already there. Right? The Guru Kulis had that shirt, I've mentioned it before. Sat Chit Ananda. And on the back of the shirt, the front said Sat Chit Ananda. Very nice. On the back of the shirt, what did it say? Maharaj, you remember now? What does the back of the shirt say? Chit happens. Chit happens. Yes, it happens automatically. One is practicing with the proper attitude and in the proper association. Sarvasya chaham riddhi sanivishto mataksmati agama pavanam cha. So sometimes, there's reluctance to accept the realization because it implies additional commitment and responsibility. Somebody says, no, I don't want that. Prabhupada tried sometimes to encourage senior men to take responsibility, and they would say, no, I don't want this responsibility. I just want to stay with you, Prabhupada. That's just an excuse. Of course, anyone would want to stay with Prabhupada. But if Prabhupada is saying, no, go preach in this country, and you're saying no, this means you do not understand your position as the servant. And you don't understand the benediction being bestowed upon you in acknowledgement of the faith that the spiritual master has observed, or the mercy of the guru to put you in a situation where he knows you'll thrive. So it's very important to accept the order of the spiritual mercy as the greatest mercy. But still, sometimes people thinking, well, maybe I'm not ready for it. Which means I'm thinking the spiritual master is wrong. It may not be like that in the mind specifically. But yes, it's what it means. Somehow or other, I know better. He doesn't understand me completely. How is that? But somehow or other. So one has to, all these instructions and all this experience living in the ashram simply meant to develop our faith, our strength of conviction, our ability to, at a moment's notice, take to the battlefield and push forward Srila Prabhupada's mission. This is that. When you don't have, very rarely do you have a situation where you can get so many disparate ashrams to coalesce and go out in force. But the brahmacharya ashram is specifically meant for that purpose. These are the special forces. The householders are like the reserve troops. They call them up for the weekend. They're the weekend warriors. This is a service. This is good. One has to do this. If he's not a weekend warrior, then what is he? One has to put himself in that situation to remain in touch with the order of the spiritual master. He has to be. It can't just be all about my household all the time, all household all the time. No, it doesn't. Cannot be like that. One has to detach himself. So the training is that, yes, I go out once a week on book distribution. I go out whatever it is, to maintain that connection to the duty of the disciple, the mission of the spiritual master, the purpose. The purpose is not to become grihasta or brahmachari. The purpose is to become a servant of the spiritual master. That's the purpose. And whatever ashram facilitates it, that's the situation that one should utilize to its fullest extent. So, here it's clear, and Prabhupada said also in Mayapur, he said, better to remain brahmachari. Better to remain. But not everybody can do, but better. So technically what my godbrother was telling me, everyone has a 50-50 chance. And everyone has a rocky road, whether it's sannyasa or grihasta. They're both rocky roads. It's not thinking that, sannyasa will be easy, or the grihasta life will be easy. No. Both are difficult. Yeah. But obviously one is a more direct route. Right? In perspective. One has less detours. It's like the express. You get on the express, you go right up to 168th Street. Boom. Right there. But you have to stay on the train. Can't pull the emergency cord. Can't freak out. Can't fall down. No, all these things are there. So, any questions on the express train? No, I'm okay. Reading rooms and restaurants. Well, the story about the reading room is that on his last trip, and I'm sure at other times when he would visit New York, he would observe, but he'd take walks in Central Park, and from the temple, you would come down and walk past, on Central Park South, walk past one very nicely appointed building. It was one of the most famous apartment complexes. The lower level is a very famous Christian Science reading room. and had floor-to-ceiling glass windows, just like as if it was a store. And you could see all these very comfortable, easy chairs inside, tall backs, and stacks and stacks of books. And nice gentlemen would sit, they would go grab a book and they would sit in these chairs in full view of anyone walking by and just be reading there, with great concentration. So Prabhupada was very impressed. He said, we should have this. We should have it. So we were building one like that, myself and Tosha and Krishna, after the 55th Street Temple was sold. We were building a cultural center to follow Prabhupada's instructions, which would have had reading room, restaurant, like that. Multi-purpose room, Radha Govinda's temple. But it was very small. It would have been the first, what has now we see we have the Bhakti Center. So prior to the Bhakti Center, we had would have been the New York Cultural Center, Radha Govinda's Cultural Center. But the GBC decided it was too small. They had made a big mistake selling 55th Street. All the forces of the spiritual warriors had been scattered. They wanted them to regroup. So therefore, we had to come and look for another building. This was that building that we found, and then we brought everybody back again. But at a great loss of time, money, effort. So one has to learn from history. Don't repeat the same mistakes. And that's why the GBC intervened in the sale of this building, because it would have been another mistake. The actual purpose would have been lost, because it was, anyway, it is what it is. Fortunately, for everyone and for the future of Krishna consciousness in New York City and perhaps even in the world, we have an opportunity to do something here significant to please Prabhupada, to do everything that he wanted. Reading room, restaurant, everything, plus the temple, plus the ashram, plus the schools. He wanted all these things. They just happened to be spread out. But if you can do them in one place, then that's the perfection of all of his vision. So it's a little tricky. It can be done. Rooftop, everything. Hydroponically, organic, whatever you want. Everything can be done. Just requires what? Resourcefulness. And who is more resourceful? How do we distribute these books? Everyone is so resourceful at learning how to approach the conditioned souls. This is not rocket science. The simplest farmer has been simple. He's only doing what tradition has told him since time immemorial. Yeah. We could probably even get some miniature cows up there. Why not? They have a breed like that, miniature. We had a dwarf in our Goshala, Hansarupa's Goshala.
We'll come and pet them and stuff like that and make it like a cow protection encouragement.
We could demonstrate cow protection even in the middle of New York City. Everything can be done. The problem is that people just don't. It's hard. You have to commit. Once you have the commitment, it's unbelievable what one person or a group of committed persons can do. Just like we see what's going on here with Ram Roy's Harinam Sankirtan parties. One man, just with commitment, that's all. Commitment and dedication and determination. These are the things that are required for any successful program. And it's hard. But the rewards are immense. What do we see here? The 3/4 kingdom of God is waiting there. This is you know, if we don't have the faith in Krishna's words, Tattva deyam puna janma nayati mamiti soja. If we don't have the faith in those words, then yes, we will not make the effort. The struggle will become too great and we'll give up. We see it all the time. Oh, this is too hard. I'm going to go become a Babaji. I'm just going to go to Vrindavan and chant and do whatever. But this is not Prabhupada's program. This is not why he came to the West. What to speak of Prabhupada's program. This is not Lord Chaitanya's program. We don't see anywhere. We're reading Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, now chapter 14. We have to go down and start reading chapter 14, where he's recommending that you should go to the forest and chant in solitary. No. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was vehemently opposed to this. Vehemently opposed. So any other questions, comments? Then we should go read Chaitanya Charitamrita. Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki. Oh, too late. Yeah, okay, one more.
At one point in the class, we were mentioning how now a lot of devotees, they'll tell people just remain in your position, whatever you're doing, and just like add Krishna consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And then you were saying like that approach may not be so good for every individual because he has like a job and he's working for like armies and he doesn't really have so much association. So if you tell him just remain where you are and just add Krishna, I mean how much advancement is he really going to make? And this point has been brought up by a few devotees I've heard like in class. They even kind of like put it down like, yeah, you know, in the early days, maybe we were a little bit like immature or naive because we would say, you know, you just join the temple or basically you're like not a devotee, you know, you're not in the temple. So I could see how, yeah, maybe there was like a lack of maturity with that understanding that if you're not living in the temple, then you're basically in Maya. But we do see the result of that was like tremendous, that there were so many devotees that were joining and were becoming full-time preachers, and that's how kind of like the movement really got revved up.
Yes.
I think
The roaring 70s.
I feel like that mood's exciting and has its place, but also with the added maturity of understanding that if you can't do that, that doesn't mean you're in Maya. But
Yes. Yeah, I mean, when you're speaking to a person, I mean, aside from giving a person a book, if there's a conversation, you know, then one has to listen and see and make an estimation of that person's situation. Some people are immediately ready because, first of all, somehow or other Krishna in his heart has directed him to the devotee, to the restaurant, to whatever. If we have the faith that this person has the capacity, the capability, which everyone does, and we're not shy to say that, well, the best thing is, of course, is to surrender 100%. I mean, if you read these books, that is what you'll get. I mean, we're giving the person a book and then we're telling him just to add Krishna. But if he opens up that book, it's going to say, well, you should immediately surrender. Sarvadhamma pratyajah. I mean, so he's thinking, well, why doesn't this person want me to, maybe there's no room in the building. No, maybe there's no temple. Because when you're out on the bus, of course, in those days, Vishnu John's bus was like a vacuum cleaner. Wherever he would go, he would just fill up with devotees. And then he would drop them off at different places. You know, he was not just, and he would also take them from the temples too. That was a different thing. A lot of controversy. There's conversations where the household, the temple presidents are complaining to Prabhupada, oh, the Vishnu John is stealing all the brahmacharis. And I remember Maharaj, when he would come to the temple, he would say, why do you want to stay here? It's all grahastas. You have to get out on the road and preach. And that's okay. As a brahmachari, that is ideal. There's no doubt about it. And in the temple, but see, we had a lot of brahmacharis in Henry Street and 55th Street. So it was up to you how you wanted to remain in that fire of devotion, tu shanti chara manticha. If you were together, it didn't matter. What is it? The whole material world is filled with, grihastas and sex life. It's everywhere you go. So in the temple, there's grihastas, but if your mind is fixed, you don't care. It doesn't affect you. You don't think, oh, I'd like to be in his position. No, what? Why? For what? It's only sex life. It's the same. Hirachor, kirachor. That was the purport for the, what is that? The prostitute and the leper. What was it called? Anyway, it was a gold pot and the iron pot. The gold pot and the iron pot. Prostitute, her price was 100,000 pieces of diamond. Lakahira, that's what it was, Lakahira. 100,000. And obviously, this leper couldn't afford, but somehow or other, his wife, was able to convince the prostitute to, service her husband, however you want to call it. And it's not, it wasn't just sex life. They come in, and the prostitute has a huge spread, whole thing, a ritual, they're feeding you and fading you, but everything was in two pots, one gold pot, one iron pot. And then as she's feeding him, she asks him, says, do you taste any difference between the gold pot and the iron pot? The soup in the gold pot, the soup in the iron pot? And he says, no, I don't taste any difference. And she says, then why are you here? Why are you here? So this is the point. Gold pot, iron pot, the same. So whatever he's in, whatever situation, he has to be fixed. Whether it's brahmachari or grihastha, the same determination has to be there. It's not different. Someone may say it's harder in grihastha life. Yes, because, butter and fire, what is the other, so many analogies we used to have as brahmacharis, yeah, like that. Drinking the sweet rice, you can't, it's right there. It's right there, what do you do? But you have to know how to conduct yourself, in general. And that habit, it will be demonstrated in your private life and in your public life. It's the same. Otherwise, it's hypocrisy. You can't say one thing and do another. It has to be a genuine approach to the holistic process of devotional service, so that you can, whatever required, because otherwise, how do you become detached at the age of 50? If you've simply been indulging in that which you're trying to control, for the purpose for which you entered into that ashram was not achieved. Was not achieved. There was no gradual detachment. You didn't learn the lesson. That's the bottom line. And so therefore, one remains fixed up. Adanta gobir vishatam tamisham punak punaschavata chavananam. That dark well, difficult to escape, without proper association. So you have to maintain this association. And so there again, the temple has the association, so that even the grihastas can associate with the brahmacharis. They can take their association. They should not give their association. They should take. The brahmacharis should willingly encourage their counterparts by their attitude, determination, example. Any other concerns, questions, comments? So now we can really say, Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Chaitanya Charitamrita ki. Who can take care of the camera? Must be not the bar. Not the bar. Take care of the camera. Shut it down. Wrap it up.
That's not very
So there's a